Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, and this is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, April 6th, 2012. Obama, Obamacare. Boy, he broadsided the Supreme Court this week. He just let them have it. He was, lamenting the fact that they could overturn his health care law, and he came out and said, that the Supreme Court was a bunch of unelected people and was saying that it'd be a terrible shame if these unelected people overturned a duly constituted law. Hello? Uh, Listen, Barack Obama is a constitutional law scholar. He was a constitutional law professor. He understands the separation of powers. That's where you have a judicial branch, a legislative branch, that's the House and Senate, and the executive branch, that's where Obama is, in that branch. And that these separation of powers were a series of checks and balances. Like if Congress came up with a crazy law and the president thought, well, this is crazy, he could veto it. Or if Congress came up with a crazy law and the president signed it, then the Supreme Court would say, yeah, no, not constitutional. These guys are unelected for a reason. All federal judges are. Why? Because if they make a tough decision, that people won't want to go and fire them for making a decision against their political wishes. That's why all the liberal and conservative judges appointed are appointed for life. They cannot be fired, so they can make tough calls. And I think Barack Obama understands the separation of powers. Come on. He's a constitutional law professor. So why did he say that? I think he knows it's going to go down. I think it'll go down 5-4 or maybe 6-3. That it will be ruled unconstitutional. And I think he's setting up a wedge issue for the fall. That's what I think. That, well, you need to vote me in. And these Supreme Court judges are out of control. They put down a duly constituted law and took away your health care. I mean, and you know why it's going to go down. It's because, the oral arguments in the Supreme Court, the administration lawyers were destroyed. I mean, they were blistered. They not just by the other side, but by the judges themselves. The rub is either you buy health insurance and everybody has to buy it, or you get a fine, a penalty. You get a fine or a penalty for not doing something. How's that constitutional? What else can they make us buy? Cell phone, white shoes, Firestone tires? What else can they make us buy with fear of a penalty? And that's the rub. I think it'll go down 5-4, 6-3, and he's setting up a wedge issue for the fall. He knows exactly what he's doing. For goodness sakes, he's a constitutional scholar. Next up, Iran stated this week it's going to remain on its nuclear path. Their words. Remain on it. Also, a new report out by the CIA that said, in 2011, Iran not only worked on its nuclear program, it expanded it. Now, there's supposed to be a big meeting with superpowers and Iran in Turkey next weekend. And I'm sure they're going to try to settle this thing without sparking World War III. And speaking of World War III, you have Syria. Syria basically is backed by Russia, and now Russia is warning the West and Arabs not to arm the Syrian rebels. There have been nearly 10,000 people killed in a violent revolution in the last year or so, and they are warning the West not to arm the rebels. Why? Well, I've said this before. I'll say it again. For one thing, Russia has a naval base on the Syrian coast. They're not going to want to give up that uberly strategic base. And, the Russians don't want to see the same thing happen to Syria, their ally, as happened in Libya. NATO came in, which is the U.S., and ran roughshod and bombed the daylights out of them. More than 20,000 sorties. And, now Gaddafi, ended up with a bullet in his head. And, they don't want to see that happen in Syria. They want their allies to remain in power. Israel has a new enemy. It is Egypt, of all countries. Egypt. The Carter administration brokered a peace deal and everything was quiet for years. And basically the U.S. paid Egypt not to attack Israel. And now the Muslim Brotherhood is gaining power, if not total control of the country now, or soon will be. And what happened this week? A rocket was fired from the Sinai Desert into Israel. Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, calls the Sinai Peninsula a terror zone. And you know, it's going to make Israel awful nervous with people firing rockets into their country. And then if you think about how Iran is getting nuclear material, I know they say it's for the peaceful production of energy, but can you see how Israel might think, well, maybe they'll, have a tactical nuke. Maybe they'll put some, radiological junk in one of these missiles and fire it into Tel Aviv. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of nuclear material to explode a dirty bomb and make things uninhabitable for, several decades, if not millions of years. So, listen, all that to say this, the Middle East is not heading towards peace. It really is not. It's very dicey, and we could have be setting up for World War III. I hope I am dead wrong. Finally, South Carolina has made it official. Gold and silver can be used and is money. Now, South Carolina is the second state to do this, to allow gold and silver to be used in transactions. And, lawmakers have to be thinking, have to be questioning the long-term value of the US dollar and the inflationary characteristics of all these bailouts and dollar swaps with Europe, and bailing out the banks and these backdoor bailouts and these budget deficits. They have to, these are not these are lawmakers. This is just two states. There are 12 more states that are considering doing the same thing. And then the last thing I wanted to say to kind of back this up, Hugo Salinas-Price. He's a billionaire from Mexico, made his money in Mexican retail. And he was lamenting the fact that, that the financial system, this paper system that he called it, is unworkable, his words, unworkable, and that, the whole world could go down in flames. And that he thinks that people who don't have gold and silver will lose everything. This is a billionaire talking about how, to protect your wealth, you need to have gold and silver. My question is this: if this is what he's willing to say in a public interview, what's he saying to his other billionaire buddies? And things must be getting perceived and must be getting, or perceived as getting, much worse for him to come out and say that. And all I can say is, I would listen to him and I would heed his words. Listen, that's the way I see it. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com. Happy Easter.